We have been talking all day here on Times Radio about Donald Trump's first 100 days. But what about the opposition? What state are the Democrats in? How are they fighting back? Christine Pelosi is a strategist, a member of the Democratic Party's National Committee. And yes, she is related to party power broker Nancy Pelosi. She is her daughter. Christine Pelosi, good afternoon from us. How are you?
I am well, and thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a great pleasure. So some people, I think, over in this part of the world are a bit mystified by what we sometimes think of as a silence from the Democrats. Where are you? What are you saying? Where's the challenge to Donald Trump?
Well, we are in the streets, we are on the phones, and we are currently in a massive fight to save our health care from Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the terrible tax bill that's coming down the pike that would directly cut off Medicaid for seniors, veterans, moms about to give birth. 50% of the births in California and 40% of the births in the United States are funded by Medicaid. So cutting people off from Medicaid will literally destroy families and lives and livelihoods. So we are right now in the middle of very actively opposing that. And it's working because about a dozen Republican members of Congress from very swing districts have already written in saying, don't cut Medicaid, don't make me vote to do that.
So you really
I think
do
we are
think
rising up, and that issue in particular is one that is very resonant.
OK, prices. A lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they believed, because he said he would, they believed he'd bring prices down. What's happened?
Well, the tariffs have crushed the economy. The Amazon announced today that every time you go shopping and you have a price increase, they'll put the Trump tariff tax right next to it. Now, we've seen that for years because in California, where we mandate health insurance, for example, you go to a restaurant and they'll say, this is your extra fee for health care. We do that in rideshare, where they'll say this is the extra fee that you pay for the driver's health care. So it is not unusual to say this is the tariff tax, but of course, Donald Trump has already labeled that a political and hostile act this morning on his 100th day of chaos and cost increases. So you know that there is an enormous pressure right now to stabilize the economy. The supply chain crisis that we saw during COVID is nothing compared to what we're seeing now. And of course, Donald Trump, who ran on nationalism and encouraged, populism and nationalism first around the world, just had that come back to bite him in Canada last night when the Liberals went from a 25-point deficit to an outright victory.
Well, I mean,
and said they were never going to bend the knee to the United States.
There is an irony, isn't there, in the fact that Donald Trump has almost certainly brought about a Liberal victory in the Canadian general election. It is down to him.
That's right. It is absolutely down to him. But it is also down to the fact that he doesn't have any of the guardrails of his first term. People are terribly afraid of even speaking not even just truth to him, but reality to him. And Elon Musk has gone through, and nobody voted for Elon Musk. They could say, well, I voted for Donald Trump and I'll trust him in the long term that these tariffs will eventually lead to inshoring. But at the same time, right now, the prices are very high. I served in the Clinton-Gore administration where Al Gore was a part of something called reinventing government, where they did streamline government. They did it with acts of Congress. They did it with consultation. They didn't just go in and randomly fire people. And so the concern that people have is that Elon Musk has been given the keys to our private data. They've gone into the back door of these agencies, just fired people, and privatized the data. And the cost of firing people is sometimes more expensive than the cost of paying people to deliver an essential government service. And that is also what you're going to see in the budget fight that'll come up in the next few weeks. So it's been 100 days of chaos. I will say that some of us were resisting from the start. Nancy Pelosi, the day after the election, called together a group to say, how are we going to save our health care? And we've been focused on that. But I think the Democrats writ large really started rising up collectively in a more
Sure.
unified way over the past month, and at the demand of our, not only of our base, but of independents too, that said, hey, wait, we need a two-party system here. We need to see a real pushback.
So who is the future for the Democrats? Is it, well, it can't be Bernie Sanders because he's very elderly. Is it AOC? Who is it? Who's the big hitter who's going to come to the forefront and take on the MAGA movement?
Well, I think you're seeing it in the streets right now. The future of the party are a number of people. Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the House Democrats, Kamala Harris, our vice president, who's going to be back speaking at our hometown of San Francisco tomorrow night.
Well, actually, I'm glad
women's group.
I'm glad you mentioned
Pete Buttigieg,
her.
who's out there on every
Kamala
podcast
Harris.
known.
Sorry to interrupt, but Kamala Harris could have come out before now. Why hasn't she said anything?
Well, I think to a certain extent, there is a space that you give the new administration to take office and, kind of see where it holds. Now we've looked at that and seen, what, this is not going in the direction we want. And I think that, frankly, there was some healing that she was doing. And we'll see now when we hear from her, that will certainly be a question that she will answer. But my assumption, having worked in the Clinton-Gore administration, and then now Gore, took some time after he lost, but then came back with his leadership on climate, which led to an inconvenient truth, which led to his leadership on climate, which continued up through last week when he was in San Francisco at San Francisco Climate Week, raising the alarm for the country and encouraging people to rise up. But again, to go to your question, though, we're going to have a wide open race for president in 2028. Nothing is guaranteed. And people want to see new voices coming into the fore.
Okay, so
and
not
Kamala Harris. Been there and done it.
Not Kamala Harris going again.
She may go again. She may run for governor of California. She said she'll let us know by the end of the summer. She very well could run for governor of California in 2026, a primary that has already begun in earnest, but obviously she would clear a lot of, not all, but a lot of the field. So we have some decision points in California that will determine her future. But in the meantime, she'll be speaking out. As I said before, we have Pete Buttigieg, we've got Hakeem Jeffries, we've got a number of senators who are finding their voices. And I think that from a standpoint of saying, well, we're out of power, we don't have the ability to call a hearing and immediately call in these administration officials and say, why did you steal our data? Why are you firing the veterans who are staffing the Veterans Suicide Crisis Hotline? Terrible things like that. Why are we losing our competitive advantage to China because you're firing all the contractors working in our health department who are now getting hired by companies owned by China?
Can I ask you?
We don't have the ability to do that, but we can have rump hearings. We can have community hearings.
Yeah,
we can have lawsuits, and we have many.
Yeah, we haven't got very much time.
And we have the voice of public opinion.
We haven't got very much time, Christina, or I haven't. And I just wanted to ask you, really, how your entire family was feeling. Your poor father was the victim of a savage assault. Your mother was very much at the centre of events on January the 6th at the US Capitol. These are not normal times. You've mentioned that that these are very difficult times for many people in the States. Are you and your family frightened and fearful?
Well, we have a very strong family. My father suffered terribly from the near murder that is still laughed about by the same forces that inspired the defendant, who said at his sentencing that he did what he did based on what he thought was a patriotic act for Donald Trump. So the fact of the matter is, we've seen the violence up close and personal, and we've, I as my family's attorney, was in court for 2 years in every single hearing we had in the state and the federal cases against this person who is now in prison for life.